Beamy Declan, 28. My job is industrial design. I spend my days thinking about ergonomics, material stress, manufacturing processes, and how an object feels in a person's hand. My entire world is built on logic, function, and tangible results. If a design doesn't work, it's a failure. No amount of fancy words can save it. It's a good job. It pays the bills, and I get to create things that people use every day. It's honest work. Have a friend, Rowan. Known her since we were kids. I say friend because that's what it was for the longest time. 15 years? Maybe more? Back in high school, she was cool. We'd talk about movies, music, stupid teachers, all the normal stuff. She was funny, a little sarcastic, down to earth. Then came college, and then the real world. Something changed. She landed a job as a social media manager for one of those new clothing brands. You know the type. They sell plain-looking hoodies and t-shirts made of ethically sourced organic bamboo fiber for about $150 a pop. Their entire marketing strategy is based on being incredibly progressive and shouting about social justice. And Rowan drank the Kool-Aid. She didn't just drink it, she bathed in it. Her entire personality started to revolve around her online presence and the ideology her company was selling. Our conversations started to shift. It was gradual at first, a few buzzwords here and there. Then it became a constant lecture. Every single interaction had to be filtered through this new lens she had adopted. I remember the first time it felt really strange. It was probably about 2 years ago. I'd just moved into a new apartment. I bought a bunch of flat-pack furniture because I'm not made of money. I asked if she wanted to come over, help me build some of it. I'd order pizza and we could hang out. Just like old times. She agreed. So I'm on the floor, surrounded by wooden panels, a million different screws, and those famously cryptic instruction manuals. I'm trying to figure out how to attach part C to panel F with screw 7B. Rowan is sitting on the only assembled chair, phone in hand. She's not helping. She's documenting, taking photos of me struggling with a screwdriver and a piece of particle board. I figured she was just making fun of me, which would have been normal. Then I saw the caption she posted on her story. It was something like, "Watching men do manual labor is a fascinating look at how society imposes rigid gender roles. We socialize boys to be builders and fixers, reinforcing the patriarchal expectation that men's value lies in their physical utility." She's sitting 3 feet away from me, in my apartment, while I'm building her a place to sit. And she's psychoanalyzing me for a few dozen likes from her online friends. I didn't say anything. I just kept building the damn bookshelf. The pizza arrived. I paid for it. She ate her slices while telling me about the importance of deconstructing the male provider stereotype. The irony was so thick I could have built furniture out of it. That was the beginning of the new normal. Every hangout became a potential minefield of her ideological hot takes. We went to a bar a few months later to catch up. I was having a tough week at work. We were designing a new ergonomic handle for a power tool, and the client kept sending back ridiculous revision requests that defied the laws of physics. I tried to explain the technical challenges, the balance between user comfort and manufacturing cost. I was genuinely stressed and just wanted to vent to a friend. Rowan listened for about 30 seconds, nodding with this blank expression. Then she cut me off. She said that my workplace stress, while valid on a personal level, was a product of my male privilege. I just stared at her. She went on to explain that my problems were first world problems, whereas she had to deal with real, systemic oppression every single day. Her prime example for that week? The office air conditioning. She claimed it was kept at a temperature optimized for the male metabolism, forcing women to wear sweaters in the summer. This, she declared, was a subtle but pervasive form of workplace misogyny. My engineering problem, involving material tolerances and injection molding techniques, was apparently nothing compared to her struggle with the office thermostat. I just ordered another beer and changed the subject. It became clear that my experiences didn't matter unless they could be used to support her worldview. My life was just a collection of data points for her ongoing thesis about the patriarchy. Then there was our other friend. Let's call him the realist. He's a finance guy, very black and white, no patience for nonsense. We were grabbing a beer, just the two of us. I was complaining about my latest interaction with Rowan. He just took a long sip of his drink and looked me in the eye. He told me straight up that Rowan wasn't my friend anymore. He said she was an ideological vampire. She didn't care about me, my thoughts, or my problems. She just needed someone to preach to, someone who wouldn't argue back. A convenient, familiar audience. He pointed out that I was always the one driving to her side of town, always the one paying when we went out for a casual bite, always the one listening to her endless monologues. He called me her emotional support male. It stung because it was true. I tried to defend her. I've known her forever. She's just passionate. That's just how she is now. He just shook his head. He told me, "Loyalty is a two-way street, man. You're driving down a one-way and you're going the wrong direction." I didn't want to admit he was right. There was too much history there. You don't just throw away a 15-year friendship over some annoying habits, right? So I kept trying. I kept making excuses. But her behavior just got more and more performative. We decided to have a movie night at my place. I suggested we watch an old action movie from the 80s. A classic. Explosions, one-liners, pure dumb fun. Big mistake. For the entire 2-hour runtime, she provided a running commentary. Not about the plot, about the problematic elements. The male gaze every time a woman was on screen. The glorification of violence as a solution to conflict. The homoerotic undertones between the male hero and his sidekick. The complete lack of agency for the female characters. It was like watching a movie with a film studies professor who hated films. She sucked every ounce of joy out of it. I finally asked her if she could just try to enjoy it as a piece of entertainment. She looked at me with genuine pity. She explained that uncritical consumption of media is how the patriarchy perpetuates itself. She was media literate, and it was her duty to point these things out. My desire to just shut my brain off and watch a helicopter explode was, apparently, a symptom of my privilege. I didn't suggest a movie night again. Another time, my car broke down on the way home from work. Nothing major, a faulty alternator. I'm pretty handy with tools, so I spent the next Saturday in my driveway fixing it myself. It was a greasy, frustrating job, but I got it done and saved myself a few $100. I mentioned it to her on the phone later that week. A normal person would say, "Oh, that sucks. Glad you got it fixed." Rowan's response? She told me it was interesting how men are socialized from birth to understand mechanics and machines. She said it was another way society funnels men into specific roles, teaching them that their worth is tied to their ability to fix things. She asked if I ever felt trapped by this expectation. I was just trying to tell her about my weekend. It was exhausting. Every single conversation was a trap. Every normal life event had to be analyzed and deconstructed through her political framework. There was no room for just being human. Her social media got even more intense. Endless infographics with pastel backgrounds and bold fonts. Posts about toxic masculinity and its various supposed symptoms. Things like stoicism, self-reliance, and being protective were all framed as harmful traits. According to her feed, the ideal man was someone who was constantly apologizing for his own existence. And her friends, her echo chamber, they were all the same. I met them once. She invited me to her birthday party at some trendy bar. It was me and a dozen clones of Rowan, all working in marketing, social media, or some other creative field for companies with vaguely positive mission statements. The conversation was a nonstop buzzword salad: intersectionality, emotional labor, performative allyship, weaponized incompetence. They spoke with absolute certainty, as if they had unlocked all the secrets of the universe. They talked about men as if they were a different species, a flawed, primitive species that needed to be either fixed or managed. I just stood there, nursing my overpriced craft beer, feeling like an anthropologist studying a newly discovered tribe. One of her friends asked me what I did for a living. I said I was an industrial designer. She gave me this look, a mix of confusion and disdain. She said, "Oh, so you make more stuff for the capitalist machine? That's problematic." This was coming from a woman wearing a $200 dress, holding a $1,200 phone, in a bar where a cocktail cost $18. I just smiled and walked away. That was the last time I hung out with her and her friends. My patience was wearing thin, very thin. I started avoiding her calls, making excuses for why I couldn't hang out, but she was persistent. I think, on some level, she needed me around. I was her link to the average man, her case study. I was the person she could try to educate, the project she could work on. Without me, she would just be preaching to the choir. The dynamic had become so one-sided. She'd call to complain about a microaggression from a male coworker. I would have to listen for 45 minutes. If I tried to mention anything going on in my life, she'd find a way to pivot the conversation back to herself or her favorite topics within minutes. It felt less like a friendship and more like an unpaid internship in gender studies. The realist friend checked in with me again around this time. He asked how things were with Rowan. I admitted it was getting bad. He told me something that stuck with me. He said, "You think you're being a good, loyal friend, but you're not. You're just enabling her. You're letting her treat you like a doormat because you're afraid of conflict. She will never respect you until you respect yourself enough to set boundaries." He was right. I knew he was right, but I still didn't do anything. I guess I was waiting for a sign, a final straw, something so blatant, so hypocritical, that I would have no choice but to finally see the friendship for what it had become. I didn't have to wait long. That sign came in the form of a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. It was Rowan. She sounded more excited than I had heard her in years. She didn't even say hello. The first words out of her mouth were, "Declan, you are not going to believe this." I braced myself. She told me that her company, the one selling the $100 t-shirts, had just won some kind of online award. It was called the Golden Beacon Award for Corporate Social Responsibility, or something equally meaningless. Basically, a panel of other marketing people decided they were the best at marketing their own virtue. To her, this was like winning a Nobel Prize. It was the ultimate validation of her work and her entire worldview. She was ecstatic. And then she said the fateful words, "We have to celebrate. This is huge. I'm booking a table for us on Friday night at the Alchemist's table." My blood ran a little cold. I'd heard of this place. It was one of those new restaurants that was all over food blogs and social media. Famous for its experimental cuisine, tiny portions, and astronomical prices. It was the kind of place you go to be seen, not to eat. The kind of place where the water menu has its own sommelier. I knew exactly what this meant. This wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. She wanted an audience for her victory lap. And I was elected. A little voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like my realist friend, screamed at me to say no. "Sorry, I'm busy. Sorry, I can't afford it. Sorry, I have to wash my hair." Any excuse would have worked, but I was tired of running, tired of avoiding. A different thought started to form in my mind, a quiet, simple, logical thought, the kind of thought I have at work when I'm staring at a design problem. What if I stopped avoiding the conflict? What if I just Let it happen. What if I treated this evening as an experiment, a stress test, to see if the object, our friendship, was still functional, or if it would shatter under the slightest pressure? So, against my better judgment, I said yes. Yeah, Rowan. Sounds great. Let's celebrate your success. I could hear her beaming through the phone. Perfect. It's going to be amazing. See you Friday at 8. She hung up. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling of my office. I felt a strange sense of calm. The decision was made. The experiment was designed. All that was left was to collect the data. Friday night arrived. I put on a decent shirt. Not a suit, but something that wouldn't get me thrown out of a place like the Alchemist's Table. I drove over there, found parking that cost more than my lunch, and walked in. The place was exactly as I expected. Dim lighting, minimalist decor, and a quiet, reverent hush, like a library for rich people. Every table was occupied by people who looked like they were either closing a multi-million-dollar deal or breaking up in the most expensive way possible. Rowan was already there, sitting at a small table for two. She was practically vibrating with self-satisfaction. She was wearing some kind of complicated black dress that looked both uncomfortable and expensive. Her phone was already out, propped up against the salt shaker, perfectly angled for a selfie. I sat down. "You made it," she said, as if I might have flaked. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. The waiter appeared out of the shadows, handed us menus the size of tombstones, and recited a long list of specials that involved foams, gels, and deconstructed vegetables. I opened the menu, and my eyes immediately scanned for the prices. They didn't disappoint. Everything was breathtakingly expensive. Rowan, without even a glance at the right side of the menu, started pointing at things. Ooh, the seared scallops with saffron essence sound divine. And I have to try the wild mushroom risotto with truffle oil. And we'll start with the artisanal cheese board. She looked at me expectantly. I just nodded and ordered a steak. It was the most normal-sounding thing on the menu, and even it was described as being grass-fed, pasture-raised, and aged for 45 days in a Himalayan salt chamber. Whatever that means. The waiter glided away. Rowan immediately launched into her victory speech. She talked nonstop about the award, how her boss praised her visionary social media strategy, how their brand wasn't just selling clothes, it was starting a conversation and creating a paradigm shift. It was a masterclass in corporate jargon and self-congratulation. I just sat there nodding, interjecting with a wow or a "that's amazing" whenever she paused for breath. The cheese board arrived. It was 3 tiny slivers of cheese, a dollop of jam, and 4 crackers, arranged on a slab of slate. It probably cost $30. Rowan took a dozen pictures of it from different angles before she let me touch it. Then came the main event, her sermon. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with righteous fervor. "You know, Declan," she began, "this award just proves what I've been saying all along. Women are finally taking their rightful place in the world. We are building our own empires, on our own terms. Here we go. For centuries, society has been structured to benefit men. The workplace, politics, even social customs. It's all built on a foundation of patriarchy." She took a delicate bite of a scallop. Take dating, for example. The whole tradition of the man paying for everything. It's so disgustingly archaic. I remained perfectly still, listening. "It's not a gesture of kindness," she continued, warming to her topic. "It's a transaction. It establishes a power dynamic from the very beginning. The man is the provider. The woman is the recipient. It implies that her time and company have a price, and he's paying it." She gestured with her fork. A truly independent, empowered woman would never allow a man to pay for her. It would be an insult to her autonomy. It's like saying she can't provide for herself. It's infantilizing. She looked at me, expecting agreement. I just gave her a slow, deliberate nod. I see your point. It makes perfect sense. This encouraged her. Exactly. And men need to understand this. They need to unlearn all that toxic conditioning. This idea that you have to be the provider is just as harmful to men. It puts so much pressure on you. True equality frees everyone. She sat back, looking incredibly pleased with herself. I'm so glad I can talk to you about this stuff, Declan. So many men get defensive. You actually listen. I am listening, I thought, more closely than you could possibly imagine. Our main courses arrived. My steak was good, but it wasn't $65 good. Rowan seemed to love her risotto. The conversation continued in the same vein. She talked about the emotional labor she performs for her friends, the weaponized incompetence of her ex-boyfriends, and the daily struggle of navigating a world designed by men. I let her talk. I was a blank slate, a perfect audience. I didn't challenge, I didn't debate. I just absorbed. The meal eventually wound down. She ordered a fancy dessert that involved a chocolate sphere that the waiter melted with hot caramel sauce. She, of course, recorded the entire process for her followers. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The waiter, with perfect timing, placed the check on the table in a small black leather folder. It was placed exactly in the middle of the table, a neutral ground. Rowan finished her last spoonful of dessert. She then did something very specific. She picked up her phone and became intensely interested in scrolling through her feed. She didn't look at the check. She didn't look at me. She was creating a pocket of silence, an unspoken expectation. The air was thick with it. This was the moment, the final part of the experiment. I let the silence sit there for a good 30 seconds. It felt like an eternity. Then I reached out. I didn't snatch the folder. I picked it up calmly. I saw Rowan, out of the corner of her eye, register the movement. I saw the slight, almost imperceptible relaxing of her shoulders. She thought I was folding. She thought the old pattern was kicking in. I opened the folder. The total was eye-watering. With the wine and all the extras, it was just north of $200. I looked at the number. I looked over at Rowan, who was still pretending to be fascinated by her phone. I waited for the waiter to pass by our table again. When he was in earshot, I caught his eye. "Excuse me," I said, my voice perfectly level. He came over. "Yes, sir?" Rowan still wasn't looking up. She was committed to the act. I pulled out my credit card and placed it on the tray. "We'll be splitting this," I said, looking at the waiter. Then I looked directly at Rowan's head, still bowed over her phone. "Right down the middle, please, 50-50. The effect was instantaneous. Her head snapped up. Her eyes were wide. The curated, confident mask of the SMM warrior was gone. She looked genuinely bewildered. The waiter, a true professional, didn't even blink. He just nodded. "Of course, sir." He took the folder and my card and walked away. Now it was just me and Rowan, in a new, much more honest silence. "What did you just do?" she asked. Her voice was a whisper. "I asked him to split the check," I said calmly. "It's about $100 each." She stared at me. The confusion on her face was slowly being replaced by something else. Anger. "Are you kidding me?" she said, her voice getting a little louder. "No. Why would I be kidding?" "Declan, that's so cheap. I can't believe you." I leaned forward slightly. "Cheap? I thought this is what you wanted. Equality, remember? No more outdated patriarchal traditions. You just gave a whole speech about it. I was listening." Her face started to flush, a deep, blotchy red. "That's not the point, and you know it. This is supposed to be a celebration for my achievement. You're supposed to be treating me." The word treating hung in the air between us. "So," I said, keeping my voice low and even, "when you were talking about how empowered women should never let a man pay, you didn't actually mean it? That was just for show?" "You're twisting my words," she hissed. People at the next table were starting to notice. "This is different. This is a special occasion. You're just trying to be cruel and make a point." "The only point I'm making is that I agree with you," I said. "I'm respecting your independence, your autonomy. I'm treating you as my equal. Isn't that what you said you wanted?" She was cornered. Her own ideology was a cage she had built, and I had just locked the door. She had no logical comeback. So she went for the emotional one. "I can't believe this. After all our years of friendship, I thought you were different. But you're just like all the other men, fragile ego. You can't stand to see a woman succeed, so you have to pull this stunt to humiliate me." The waiter returned. He placed 2 small folders on the table, one with my card, one for her. He was a statue, no expression. He'd seen this movie 100 times. Rowan glared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. She snatched her purse, pulled out her wallet, and slapped her credit card down on the table without even looking at the bill. She wouldn't look at me. She was fuming, staring at a fixed point on the wall behind me. I signed my slip. I made sure to add a generous tip on my half. The waiter deserved it. I stood up. "Well," I said, "thanks for the dinner. It was very enlightening. Congratulations again on your award." She didn't respond, didn't even move. I turned and walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back. The cool night air felt amazing. It felt like I had just removed a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. I got to my car. Before I could even put the key in the ignition, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rowan. A wall of text, all in capital letters, calling me a misogynist, a cheapskate, a terrible friend, accusing me of being jealous of her success, saying she never wanted to see me again. Another buzz, and another. The messages kept coming, each one more frantic and angry than the last. I didn't read them all. I got the gist. I started the car and put the phone in the passenger seat, face down. The next morning, I saw she had blocked me on everything. But before she did, she had posted a vague, passive-aggressive story. A black screen with white text. "Sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you've known the longest. A reminder to all my queens out there, never let a man's insecurity dim your sparkle. Know your worth." Underneath, a flood of comments from her echo chamber. "You're so strong. Men are trash. We love you, queen." I looked at the post. I looked at the blocked profiles. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just quiet. My realist friend called me later that day. He must have had a sixth sense. "So," he said, "judging by the cryptic post on your ex-friend's Instagram, I'm guessing you two finally had it out." "You could say that," I replied. I told him the whole story, the dinner, the speech, the check. He was silent for a moment, and then he let out a huge laugh. "Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's poetic." He told me I'd finally done it. I'd finally respected myself. And he was right. Our friendship had become a badly designed product. It was all form and no function. It looked like a friendship. It used the words of friendship, but it didn't work like one. It was unbalanced, illogical, and deeply hypocritical. And all it took to break it was a single, simple test of its core principles. I lost a friend of 15 years that night. But looking back, I realized I hadn't really had a friend for the last few of them. The final bill for her half of the dinner was a little over $100. That, apparently, was the price of her entire belief system. Cheapest lesson I ever learned.